here we go.
Welcome to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast. We're going into Week 17. Happy holidays, folks. I'm going to be flying solo on this one. Pat is on vacation, so a well-deserved one as well for him and his family, enjoying this time of year to, kind of take things easy and enjoy the holidays as you're supposed to right around now. So I'm gonna do my best without my buddy to try to give you some of these quality pickups for the week. Again, we're in the end game. It is championship week for most coming right up. Maybe a two-parter, maybe not. But either way, we are going to look to give you some names, some streamers. I did a little research myself and tried to look at some running back, wide receivers that maybe could get you a little flex appeal. And again, maybe you're playing for a championship. Maybe you're playing for pride. Our league of record, we do have a system that teams that don't make the playoffs are still encouraged to put out their best team possible in order to secure a top draft pick and fall back in order from that. So as opposed to a tanking concept, you're actually rewarded for winning even though you've already lost, putting out your best team, getting the most points, and at the end we figure everybody in there and find out who's going to be the winner of our toilet bowl. That's the way we do it. I know some other leagues may have a similar concept just to encourage people to stay on board. If it's a one and done league, again, it could just be whatever. There is still one more game to speak of for Week 16. The Dolphins and the Saints Monday Night Football is due to kick off. Some people are still holding out hope for a big Alvin Kamara, or I do see that Pat is holding out hope for his large league to get a Devontae Parker 22 plus, I believe, is his miracle for the holidays. So hopefully Santa's got a little something left in that bag for him and he can move on. I unfortunately did not move on in my work league. Had a couple guys on my bench that just, based on the concepts of who you normally would start, didn't start them. And of course, one or two of those might have helped me, but it was not meant to be for me this week and this season. But I will take it for what it is and move on. There's always another season. So again, good luck to you, Pat, tonight. I'll be pulling for you. We'll start with some running backs and wide receivers that may be out there on the waiver wire. One of them is going to be Darrell Williams from the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I know a lot of people probably have him hanging around on a bench maybe somewhere, but he's some guy that, tends to get cut maybe on a weekly basis because you're not holding that roster spot. You're going for a hotter name or a hotter hand. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did injure his collarbone last night. Supposedly x-rays are negative. It's a week to week. Aren't we all week to week? But Darrell Williams filled in quite well, and he has throughout the season and his career when pressed into service. So that's something to monitor. I think that Darrell Williams, if he is available, he's going to be priority one waiver wire pickup for this week. And again, for some of you, it may carry over into next week as well. All these teams are still playing for everything. It's not your usual blowing out the conference and shutting it down. Everybody's trying to get that top spot and get that bye week. So I think Darrell Williams, while owned in a lot of leagues, he should definitely be a pickup for you based on the volume and what's going on in Kansas City right now, where earlier this season they didn't look like Kansas City anymore, and people were getting a little nervous, but they got everything clicking right now. And again, with Edwards-Helaire not being 100%, and I think they're gonna bring him along. They're not going to look to burn him at the end of the season, where again, Darrell Williams is a quality player, and I think he's going to be that guy to get you maybe get you over the hump this week if you're looking to plug in for Kansas City. Next name on the list, we're looking at Boston Scott. Most leagues, he has been dropped a lot. Miles Sanders is out. He's not on IR, but he's out with a broken hand, so he's definitely going to be out. Jordan Howard had a stinger. Again, that running attack in Philadelphia is one of the big reasons why Boston Scott should be on the radar. He's probably only owned in about maybe 5% of leagues. You got a Washington football team that just got obliterated on Sunday Night Football by the Dallas Cowboys. Boston Scott should be available, should be picked up, and probably being the de facto RB1 in that offense, if not the lightning to Jordan Howard's thunder if he's okay. Again, based on that volume that the Eagles running game does handle. Just when everybody thought that the free James Robinson post Urban Meyer was going to become a thing. He had an injury with his heel earlier in the season, had played through it, but unfortunately, it looks like it finally came to roost. He tore his Achilles and will be out for the rest of the season. It's a shame just to see him start to get his legs under him, so to speak. A name that really is the fill-in for him is Dare Ogunbonale. He was the backup running back who was pressed into service. He's only owned in about 0.1% of leagues. So if you had him, more power to you. 57 yards and a touchdown. He also had 2 receptions for 15 yards. He got about 15 points. He's pretty much going to be the guy going forward for these next 2 weeks. Again, I know Jacksonville Jaguars offense doesn't scream, ooh, let me get them in my starting lineup. Dare Ogunbonale, who is now the RB1, and you're still going to get that volume. We'll see what happens. I think that Dare Ogunbonale could be worthy, again, of a flex start. If he's going to give you 15 points, that's a nice safe floor, RB2 level. And if he can make plays out of the backfield receiving, obviously in a PPR, that's even better. So that's our name to look for. Another name that's still floating around out there is Duke Johnson. It came off a monster game, 27 points plus in our league of record. Just really kind of woke things up in that backfield. And obviously it's Myles Gaskin, Salvin Ahmed, Malcolm Brown, it's Phillip Lindsay, and now there's another name to sprinkle in who had a quality day and had a little bit of a connection with the quarterback. Don't know exactly what to think of it. Obviously, tonight we'll clear that up a little bit. Another full week of if Duke is the guy or if it's going to be a committee. If Gaskin, who anytime he gets the football does pretty well, but for some reason he almost seems like they're phasing him out a little bit at times. Kind of hard to tell. Duke Johnson probably available still in some of your leagues, even for a quick pickup for tonight. For those that are maybe still hanging on by a thread, he's somebody who could be available, and we'll know a little bit more what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks with Miami. Miami's still sitting at 7-7, so they're a win or two away from being a playoff team. They're going to keep fighting. Duke Johnson, if he's available, I would hang on to him. We had our annual flirtation with greatness by Rex Burkhead. Monster game over the weekend. In our league of record, over 30 points, 22 carries, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns. I tried to go to the well earlier this season. It didn't quite work out. Now that David Johnson has been banged up and did not play this weekend, you really didn't see that ball go to anybody else. And to see Burkhead dominate, the matchup totally dictated that he would have a decent game, but to that level against the Chargers, who can stop the pass, they just can't stop the run. Seeing Rex Burkhead out there doing that kind of damage, Rex Burkhead's getting the carries. If he gives you half of what he did, obviously that's a nice 15 points. That could be definitely Rex in the flex. RB2 worthy start for Rex Burkhead. Probably available in your league. Is he worth a start? Burkhead could be a guy to help get you through the next couple weeks in a pinch. And finally, Devontae Booker of the New York Giants, probably only owned in about 20% of leagues. A lot of people will have him as a handcuff to Saquon Barkley. He's just really been the better running back. Obviously, health-wise is one thing, but even watching with the eye test, he looks shot out of a cannon, and Saquon has been nursing injuries all season. The Giants don't have a lot to play for down the stretch other than pride. And I wouldn't be surprised if they completely shut him down over the next week or two, giving Devontae Booker a lion's share, so to speak, of the running game. This is a little speculative, mind you. Again, I'm not guaranteeing that the Giants are going to give him 30 carries a game, but what he was able to do in the time when Barkley was out, and even now where you do see a smaller sample size, if the Giants do look to kind of shut things down, you could see Devontae Booker picking up some hefty volume. Devontae Booker, maybe just throw him on your bench, hang on to him, be ready to see the increased volume in the next week or two. On the wide receiver tip, not a lot, to be honest with you. A lot of the wide receivers that you've seen, again, you've seen some of these upticks in 1 week, one hit wonders, so to speak. A lot of this is COVID based, where, I mean, just this Monday alone, I mean, you're seeing again people popping up on the COVID reports for being out. Okay, you still have to wait till the end of the week or to that game to see if they get cleared. Some of these guys aren't getting cleared. Suddenly you're getting the wide receiver 3 or 4 from a roster become a 1 or 2, and these guys are just getting that volume. They're doing it nonstop, so to speak, for 1 week, and then they go back to where they were in the lineup, and everything's back to normal. Again, some of these are injury based, but the COVID thing has really kind of thrown us a little bit out of whack. A couple of these names I'm going to give you are people that have been fairly consistent over the last couple weeks. So it's non-COVID related, I guess you could say. First name is Jakobi Meyers. He's just about owning just a shade under 50% of leagues. So he's probably floating around out there. I had him on my roster earlier this year, and it could be frustrating. Mac Jones did lean on him a lot, but Hunter Henry has kind of stepped in as his de facto go-to guy. And again, they really got to push the running game now where you haven't seen Mac Jones throwing the football a lot. That being said, Myers, in back-to-back weeks, he has 6 catches each week. So in a PPR league, and again, he's really, the touchdowns really haven't been coming for him, obviously, but on the volume and that Mac Jones, if he's going to be throwing the football to end the season, which, again, New England's fighting it out with Buffalo. They just took a tough loss yesterday. If Jakobi Meyers is available in your league, based on the volume that he may see over the next couple of weeks, and knowing he's put up that production throughout, if somebody dropped him to add a defense in a pinch or figured, hey, he's on my bench, I'm not going to use him. Right now, I mean, he definitely has flex appeal, possibly a wide receiver 2 if you're really in a bad spot, depending on where you're at. I mean, most of you're in the playoffs, you're in the thick of it, you're in a championship, you're not really going to tinker with it too much. But again, this might be a guy that over the next week or two could have something left in the tank to help you get over the hump. Laquan Treadwell, for those of us that have been in fantasy football and football fans, period, you've seen his career. It has never been impressive, oft injured, never could get over the hump with the Washington football team, with the Minnesota Vikings. He seems to have found a niche in Jacksonville. And again, Jacksonville offense doesn't scream, sign me up, coach. But over the past 6 games, he's got 36 targets, 23 receptions for 305 yards. Again, that volume's there. He's kind of becoming a trustworthy receiver for Trevor Lawrence. And again, that offense has gone through the ringer and just lost their starting running back. So this could push him into solid flex, possibly wide receiver 2 area. We just saw Marvin Jones get back on the scoreboard this weekend in a loss to the Jets, but Treadwell's been putting it up over the last 6 games with targets and receptions. If he gets a touchdown mixed in there, suddenly he's a legit wide receiver. In a very similar situation, we're looking at Zay Jones from the Las Vegas Raiders. Barely owned, if at all, obviously. Another one, last 5 weeks, and top 20 in targets in the league. Again, 36 targets for him as well, 25 receptions, 222 yards, averaging 9 to 10 points a game roughly. And again, if you were to sprinkle a touchdown in there based on the volume, if you're especially in a PPR league, just like Treadwell from Jacksonville, where the volume's starting to dictate that this guy's getting the football. Darren Waller being out, obviously, is a major factor. Hunter Renfrow is the wide receiver 1. We know that. Again, he's been kind of like a Cooper Kupp light to certain extents this season, not on that level, but kind of getting around in that region. So if Zay Jones is available, he could get you through a week on a flex tip. If he gets a touchdown, that's going to push him into solid wide receiver 2 areas. And again, the volume is there. That's why you would be chasing those points. KJ Osborne of the Minnesota Vikings, he's really been a little up and down, a little mercurial, but he's got 14 points or better 3 out of the last 4 weeks. Adam Thielen's dealing with a high ankle sprain. He tried to play, got tackled pretty hard, and seems like he might be not ready to get through the rest of this season. If Osborne does become the number 2 in that offense, he did have 5 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown and a loss to the Rams. And we've seen some of those where he can be a little touchdown dependent, but he does make some big plays, which can chalk up some bonus points for you. If he's available in your league, I think KJ Osborne is a solid pickup, especially if you're going to see Adam Thielen sitting out for extended time again by re-injuring the high ankle sprain. And some of those are serious. We've seen people get shut down for the season. Minnesota, fighting for their playoff lives, even with that loss yesterday, would be interested in trying to continue the season. And Osborne has shown flashes of being a solid wide receiver too when given the opportunity. Touchdown dependent, yes, but he does make big plays. If he is available, you want to get him on your roster. So that's going to do it for the waiver wire running back wide receiver pickup. We're going to move into quarterbacks. We have 2 in the same game. It's also, going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Derek Carr this week against the Indianapolis Colts. They are one of the bottom end teams when it comes to defending the quarterback. They give up some points, to say the least. And Derek Carr, in the last 4 weeks, he hasn't been horrible. The problem has been giving back 4 points just on turnovers. And again, that can really have an effect on you. Those just chip off the top. So where he was kind of flying high at the beginning of the season, putting up 20 and 30 a game and came back down to earth pretty quick. This matchup dictates that he's probably going to right the ship. I mean, again, he didn't blow away the Denver Broncos, but they are a tough team. That was a division game. They were down at halftime, and he came back, led the team down for 2 scores, and did enough to win the game. This game probably gives them a little bit more of an opportunity. Obviously, again, they're fighting for their playoff life. The Colts are as well. You could very well see Derek Carr in that 25 plus, just flinging that ball around. The matchup dictates it. I mean, Indianapolis is kind of tough against the run, so you might see Josh Jacobs kind of take a little bit of a backseat to the passing game. And again, you may see Darren Waller back. Again, there's still a chance he could play, but we just talked about, obviously, Hunter Renfrow, Zay Jones, some of those players able to make some big plays against that Indianapolis defense. Derek Carr looks to be a possible pickup for you. He could win your week. We shall see. Another quarterback that should be available. If you're streaming, you've probably used him once or twice this year. He's won 4 straight starts. He did come in, came in to make up the difference in a game and has not really taken a backseat to Jacoby Brissett since. Tua Tagovailoa against the Tennessee Titans this week. They're one of the they're not a great defense when it comes to stopping the passing game of another quarterback. Jimmy G just about did everything he could and almost won that game. So this past week against Tennessee, seeing Tua in this situation again, he's averaging about 235 yards plus. He's got 7 touchdowns over the last few weeks. You're getting your wide receivers back. Devontae Parker's back. He loves some Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, who will have a little bit of a tough time. We will talk about later on against that Tennessee defense. But Tua against the Tennessee defense, they're about the 23rd best or worst, depending on how you look at it, against the quarterback position. So both teams, Tennessee obviously is a little bit further up top. They could lose a game and still be in a good situation. Tua could come in there. Again, we're going to see him on Monday night in a couple hours, just kind of kicking things off against the Saints. And then tough AFC matchup against Tennessee. But I do like Tua in this situation. Again, looking how consistent he's been over the last few weeks, where, again, if you're looking to stream that position, he's a name that could help you out. Davis Mills of the Houston Texans. I like him a lot. I like him really a lot this week against the San Francisco 49ers. They are a team that's really on the bottom end defending the quarterbacks all season long. Again, we saw Tannehill carve them up a little bit this past week. They're giving up, they give up around 18, 19 points a game to the position. Davis Mills has been averaging 21 points a game. He's got a 300-yard passing game. He's got 5 touchdowns and 1 interception. He's getting Brandon Cooks back. We talked about Rex Burkhead having a monster day against the Chargers. And again, Davis Mills wasn't expected to be an elite passer, and he still had a pretty solid game against the Chargers. Maybe they just looked past the Houston Texans, but they took a tough loss. I like Davis Mills this week. He's a streamable option against the San Francisco 49ers based on that matchup. And finally, again, going back to the game we started with, the Raiders against the Colts. Carson Wentz against the Las Vegas Raiders. They're about middle of the road against the quarterback position. While you do see, again, there's a chance that they could get a little bit more involved. They do play the run reasonable. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor has been the focal point of the offense. But if you do see Wentz get involved in this game a little bit more than he has been, he's got 20-plus point potential. Obviously, we know he can do some stuff with his legs. He gets those lean yards for first downs and goal line situations where he could pick up a nice, easy rushing touchdown. He did put up 21-plus against Arizona for not being super duper involved in the game as much. Again, you're seeing Carson Wentz have a decent bounce back season. He's had some highs, a couple lows, but for the most part, doesn't turn the ball over a lot, which helps to keep all those points in his hand. He can fumble a little bit, but recently he hasn't been a bad quarterback. So I kind of like Carson Wentz as a streamable option against the Las Vegas Raiders this week as well. Moving on to the tight end position. A couple names just to remember that are available if you're looking to stream that position. First name up we're going to talk about is Jared Cook. Again, he hasn't put up the production, but the volume is there. He's going up against a tough matchup this week. It is against the Denver Broncos. They are one of the top teams against the tight end position. They're a top 5 against it. That being said, looking at the amount of targets and volume that Cook has received over the past few weeks, puts him in the upper echelon of tight ends. The problem is he hasn't been catching the football. So you can throw it to him all day. It's just up to him to catch it. If he does turn around and give you some Jared Cook of old, he could end up with 7 receptions and a touchdown. Suddenly you're in double digits. You're looking at 14, 15 points. And we know that there is the capability of that with the Los Angeles Chargers offense. They did come off a really bad game this week against Houston, but looking at the matchup, it is tough. So this one, proceed with caution, but the volume is there. And if you're desperate, Jared Cook is an option, albeit a tough one against the Denver Broncos. Somebody who's really been doing well recently at the tight end position. Since week 10, he's had 5 double-digit games. Gerald Everett of the Seattle Seahawks. He's got a nice matchup this week against the Detroit Lions. They are one of the bottom teams against the tight end position. We've seen, again, you want to talk about volume and usage. Russell Wilson, it seems like that's sometimes the only guy he will throw to. He's been a 4 receptions, 60 yards, and a touchdown kind of guy. He did have one little bit of a rough game earlier this season, but beyond that, lately Gerald Everett has really been coming on strong as a top 10 tight end in fantasy football. And again, not many people associate the tight end position with Seattle. You think running backs, you think DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They're out of playoff contention at this point. So right now, everything's really for pride. But Gerald Everett with a nice matchup against the Detroit Lions, definitely a streaming option and has been putting up top 10 tight end production fantasy for the past few weeks. Ricky Seals-Jones versus the Philadelphia Eagles. We know that the Eagles love to give up points to the tight end. We talk about it every week. It's almost an auto start. Poor of a game as he had the other day. Even Evan Ingram got involved and got his touchdown that was always going to come against the Philadelphia Eagles. You're looking at Ricky Seals-Jones. There is John Bates as well as out there. He kind of stole the thunder in a horrible game against the Dallas Cowboys, but he did have 2 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown. He almost had one against the Eagles the other week. At the end of the day, that position just gives the Eagles fits the tight end position. It's almost impossible for them to stop. They give up the points, they give up the yards, they give up the receptions. So Ricky Seals-Jones is probably going to be a solid option. A lot of people are going to try to sneak him into their starting lineup if they stream a tight end just based on that matchup against the Eagles. Bates could be used as well, possibly. You could see any points coming against the Eagles come out of that position based on the matchup. So again, a poor defense against the tight end probably be an option for you to start and stream and possibly could win your week. Tyler Higbee of the Los Angeles Rams. He's been on our radar throughout the season. A little bit of a COVID issue the other week, so he did have 5 receptions for 41 yards in a win against the Minnesota Vikings. Matt Stafford did not have a great day, throwing 3 interceptions. Higbee was going to have a tough time anyway. Minnesota does do really well defending against the tight end position. Now, ironically, this week's matchup against the Baltimore Ravens is the opposite end of the spectrum, where Baltimore really can't do much to stop it. The Rams' offense as a whole, when they're clicking, when they're on all cylinders, they're one of the best in the league. But that tight end position for the Baltimore Ravens is right up there with the Eagles and a few of those other teams. They just really have trouble defending it. Tyler Higbee will be a solid streaming option this week against the Baltimore Ravens based on the volume and the matchup and that explosive offense. You could see him in double-digit land. He could probably get you a solid top 10 tight end production for Week 17 based on that matchup. And finally, this week, a nice streamable option, Cole Kmet. This week, based on injuries, they had to start Nick Foles, and you did see Cole Kmet get involved against the Seattle Seahawks. 4 catches for 49 yards. It's pretty much where he's been averaging. He's been averaging 4 receptions and about 43 yards over the past few weeks based on the volume that he receives with targets. He did have a play where he shoulda, woulda, coulda, caught a nice big touchdown at the back of the end zone. The problem was it was a little overthrown. It took him out of bounds. And then ironically, Jimmy Graham, yes, he still plays football for the Bears, stole that touchdown from him a play or two later. And it was a shame because it would have been nice for Kmet to get a little bit more of a breakout game, so to speak. And that was the situation to do it. Going against the Giants this week, again, they're middle of the road against the tight end position. Assuming that Foles will start, Fields will start, Andy Dalton will start, really don't know. They may just kind of ride it out with Foles and just see what happens. He's a big veteran name that can maybe just guide the rest of that young offense through the next couple of weeks. We shall see. But at the end of the day, Cole Kmet, based on the volume, I kind of like that. He's been giving you a nice, comfortable 8 points or so a week, especially obviously on the PPR end. And he's a touchdown away from being a double-digit contributor. I think this season you're starting to see flashes. Next season, I think he'll probably start as a top 12 ranked tight end, and it'll always have an option to move onward and upward as some of these young tight ends do. So I like Cole Kmet as a streaming option this week against the New York Giants. Finally, we're going to give you some defensive streamers for this week. Again, based on the matchups. Obviously, some of you may already have some heavy hitters that are rostered, so it's going to be hard to get a hold of the good ones. But again, we just talked about that Giants-Bears game, and based on the way the offenses have been, you could kind of coin flip and take either one at this point. The Bears have been okay on defense. Again, it's not the great Chicago Bears. Even with Khalil Mack out, they haven't been horrible. The matchup against the Giants would say that, again, you're talking about Mike Glennon, Jake from State Farm is the quarterback. There's not a lot going on with the Giants. They're pretty much kind of winding down the season and just trying to get out of here without getting too many people hurt. At the same time, the Bears are not lighting teams up on the score sheet. Matt Nagy, he could be fired as soon as this week, maybe next week. We know it's coming. It's just a matter of when they drop the axe on them. So either defense from that game has a chance to steal some points. We're talking about the Giants or the Bears. Again, not the most guaranteed of starts, but if you're chasing and you're looking at, again, a matchup against, that offense doesn't do a lot and they turn the ball over and doesn't move the football, doesn't score points, all those factors that kind of contribute to the points for a defense and special team. You could choose either defense. You could go with the Giants or you could go with the Bears in that game and get yourself somewhere in maybe a 6 to 10 range based on the ugly matchup that is that game. Another defense this week, I think you kind of have to go with the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington football team. Washington definitely looks like they've just run out of gas. It was an embarrassing loss on Sunday Night Football to the Dallas Cowboys, division rival Cowboys, who went in there and just, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, had played them kind of tough. You're kind of thinking, okay, 27-20 loss. They didn't look like they were going to maybe win, but they did make it respectable. They come back, they go into Dallas, and they were also coming off of that short week that a lot of these teams, they had to make up the game against the Eagles. This is a quick turnaround as well. They had to make up that game on Tuesday. COVID really bit them pretty hard when it came to everything. So looking at the Washington football team this week, it's a tough matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. I just feel like the Eagles are definitely cruising into the playoffs. Defense has played well enough, to keep them in playoff contention. That being said, the matchup against Washington, I think it'll be a little bit too much for Washington. So the Eagles defense will probably get you a nice 8 to 10 points, I think, this week against that Washington football team offense. I did believe I heard that Kyle Allen would be starting or playing the majority compared to Taylor Heineke. So again, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on down there in Washington, but they're going to have a tough time. Eagles defense is a good pickup this week. And last but not least, stop me if you heard it, but the Kansas City Chiefs defense. And yes, they're going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. I do understand that the Bengals coming off of another torturing of the Baltimore Ravens this season. They've really crushed their division. Cincinnati is going to have a lot to play for in this game. They're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, everybody's going to laugh and say, well, what are you talking about? The Chiefs defense is horrible. They were horrible. The whole team was horrible. But since week 8, the Kansas City defense is averaging almost 12 points a game. They righted the ship everywhere. They got the offense back on track, and they got the defense back on track. They were a solid defense for a good 2.5 years during their 2 Super Bowl runs. So seeing them wake up and smell the coffee is one thing. But now you're going to say, well, there's no way. Look at what Cincinnati just did. Cincinnati is going to be looking across that field, and they're going to be trying to compete with Kansas City offensively. You can do it against the Baltimore Ravens. Their defense it's not the Ravens defense that we're used to seeing, and they're missing people all over the field. Their secondary is just, they're starting whoever they can find. That being said, Kansas City, and looking what they've done over the last few weeks, is not ready to go lightly against a conference opponent. I like the Kansas City defense. I like them a lot against Cincinnati. I know you're going to laugh. I think they're really going to show Cincinnati who's boss in this game. So that's going to do it for streamers, waiver wire, and other. The starts and sits, Pat was able to get me his, and I will name them. Again, I don't know his rationale, but I can kind of tell just from looking at what he picked. But I will name them just to counterpoint my choices for start sits as well. My quarterback start of the week, I like Kirk Cousins versus the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay's defense does give up some points. They're on the bottom end against the quarterback position. Last 4 weeks, Kirk Cousins, he's got the 4th most touchdowns. He's been quarterback 10, basically. And if it wasn't for basically a rash of turnovers that he really hadn't been doing at the beginning of the season, closer to quarterback 3, based off of giving back all those points that you lose as a quarterback off of turnovers. Kirk Cousins, start of the week at quarterback. He's going to put up the numbers. He's going to put up the volume. And that's a division game where they are playing for their lives, and you're competing against Aaron Rodgers. It's going to be an offense over city type of game when it comes to that. So I do like Captain Kirk against the Green Bay Packers. Pat has selected as his start of the week Joe Burrow versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Kind of flies in the face of what I mentioned as a possible defensive streamer. But again, looking at what that offense just did, I think Pat's looking at Cincinnati Bengals as being high flying, and you're going to see Joe Burrow as Pat's start of the week. Pat is looking to sit Justin Herbert this week against Denver. Obviously, Denver is one of the better teams against the quarterback, against the passing game. It's a tough divisional matchup, and Herbert coming off a pretty lackluster performance. I mean, he put up some yardage, but again, against Houston, they did lose that football game, and it wasn't really a game. It looked like Houston controlled them the whole time. Maybe they were looking ahead to this game. I don't know. But Pat is sitting Justin Herbert this week against the Denver Broncos. I am sitting Russell Wilson versus the Detroit Lions. They're out of the playoffs. The last 4 weeks, Russell Wilson has been quarterback 11. I don't know what's up. If it's an injury that's still lingering with the hand, that offense does not look right at all. Seattle year in and year out gets things done. They make the playoffs. They're a tough team. We saw Wilson miss a decent amount of time with a hand injury. Maybe he's not 100%. You see parts of the offense disappear where, Tyler Lockett gets involved big time 1 week and he's gone. DK Metcalf was on a milk carton almost for a short time. The running game is non-existent. Obviously, Carson going out with the neck injury. They've put Rashad Penny in there and they signed Adrian Peterson. But Russell Wilson doesn't look like he wants to be in Seattle anymore. And there's a lot of rumors that some teams that would be interested in him or interested in his services. I don't like the matchup this week against Detroit only because it strikes me as one where they're going to be going through the motions for the next couple of weeks. I don't see Russ cooking, baking, doing much of anything over these next couple of games. I think he's just going to try to get out of there and maybe weigh his options in the offseason and see about making a move out of Seattle. So I do not like Russell Wilson this week. I would sit him against the Detroit Lions. They are the 11th best defense against the quarterback. So as bad as the Lions are, again, it's not the best situation for Russ and the boys. Moving on to running backs, Pat is starting Ronald Jones of the Tampa Bay Bucks versus the Atlanta Falcons. I can understand that, where, again, Atlanta Falcons defense has kind of been non-existent throughout most of the season. And that being said, you're looking at Ronald Jones being the RB1 right now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, you're going to see him be a focal point of that offense, knowing that Brady is also missing some wide receivers. We did see Antonio Brown come back, but Ronald Jones, Pat, is making his start of the week against the Atlanta Falcons, chasing some points. I don't blame you there, Pat. I am going to start David Montgomery against the New York Football Giants. Over the last 4 weeks, David Montgomery has been the RB8 in our league of record. He is second with 22 receptions over the last 4 weeks, and he's fifth in receiving yards. As bad as the Bears' offense has been, we know Montgomery missed a couple weeks there with a knee sprain. He came back and has really just kind of turned things back on. Last year, he was a top 10, top 5 running back in fantasy. So you're starting to see him show why he is highly touted in a bad offense. You're going to look to see him try to finish out strong this season. I like the matchup against the Giants. They are the 25th best, which is not that good against stopping the run. So I love David Montgomery this week. Start of the week, I think he's going to probably be an RB. He'll probably be one of the top 5 running backs, I think, in fantasy football this week. So make sure you have him in your lineup, and I think he's going to do pretty well for you. As far as sits of the week, I am sitting Ezekiel Elliott. Yes, Ezekiel Elliott versus the Arizona Cardinals. They've only given up 6 touchdowns all season to running backs. Over the last couple weeks, if you look at Zeke, he's really been touchdown dependent to get a lot of his points. If you take away the scores from those games and you're looking, he's not a PPR option at all. It's Tony Pollard is really almost the better option out of the two. I know he's been banged up with a bit of a knee injury, so they're not trying to force the issue. Dallas it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a big matchup, obviously, against the Arizona Cardinals, who are really starting to leak, pretty hard. Now, Dallas obviously is still fighting to see about maybe securing a bye in week 1 of the playoffs. Green Bay right now holds the top spot in the NFC. Dallas is right behind them. So are the Rams and the Bucks. So we're trying to get to the finish. Dallas did just clinch the division on Sunday. But Ezekiel Elliott this week, he's going against the Arizona Cardinals. They're the 4th best defense against the running back position. I think this is going to be an aerial show. This is going to be Dak trying to throw all over the field. The defense is going to play tough, but I don't like Zeke in this matchup. Again, a little too touchdown dependent, and The Cardinals just don't give up touchdowns to that position. Pat is sitting Josh Jacobs versus the Indianapolis Colts. And again, that's based on the matchup. The Colts have been a very tough defense against the running game as well. Jacobs has had a reasonable season. He's had some decent games, but that whole Raiders offense has really been kind of rough to kind of catch on to. After the first couple of weeks, they look great, and they've just kind of gone downhill. We talked about it multiple times. The coach and other off the field things that have really shredded them up. Injuries as well. Josh Jacobs, Pat's sitting him this week against the Colts, and you know what, Pat? I agree with you. Moving on to the wide receiver position, Pat's hoping to carry some of that mojo that he needs tonight. He's got Devontae Parker versus the Tennessee Titans. So he likes Devontae Parker as his start of the week going into Week 17 versus Tennessee. Their secondary has not been that great. They do well against the tight end position. They do well a little bit against the running game and things like that. But they do have some trouble stopping the wide receiver position. So I think Pat's hoping for the best and hoping to carry some mojo with Devontae Parker. If he has a big game for him tonight, gets him into his final, that he would carry over against the Tennessee Titans. Ironically, I'm going to be in the same game. I like A.J. Brown versus the Miami Dolphins. I'm not high on A.J. Brown as a total overall player because of the health issues, but Miami Dolphins are 29th against the wide receiver position. He just went off against the San Francisco 49ers. 11 catches for $145 and a touchdown. That's really what I think everybody thought he had the potential to be. He's had some of those games even this season. My knock on him is just that. It's the injuries that really hold him back. If you were able to give you 16, 17, maybe 18 weeks worth of production, it's not always going to be as high end as we just saw against the Niners, but he shows you that he's got that elite ability. Now you're seeing Julio Jones, Nick Westbrook, Akine are both currently out now with COVID. We'll see if they get cleared. This could be a monster volume game for him as well against a bad secondary. So A.J. Brown, love him this week against the Miami Dolphins. I don't like Michael Pittman against the Las Vegas Raiders. For most people, he's a wide receiver 2. I don't think a lot of people have him as a wide receiver 1. He's definitely, wide receiver 2, flex concepts. The passing game doesn't get as much love as it maybe should. It's Jonathan Taylor in that offense. We know that. But you're looking at a Raiders defense that has given up 1 touchdown in the last 4 weeks. They only give up about 17 points to the position. I know for a lot of people, the hope is that, hey, maybe this is that big game for Pittman. He shows flashes. And again, I like Wentz in the game overall, but I don't think Pittman's going to have a dominant performance. I think it's one of those where you dink and dunk and you're getting your Ashton Doolins and different players involved. T.Y. Hilton's starting to become a little bit more of involved, so to speak, I guess, in that offense. So I don't like Michael Pittman this week. Raiders are the 3rd best against wide receivers. I just think it's a tough matchup for him based off of that. Pat is sitting Scary Terry McLaurin against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are also one of the best defenses against the wide receiver position. We just saw Darius Slay make a Pro Bowl again. Welcome back, sir. Thank you for your service. The Washington football team as a whole, we just saw them get obliterated on Sunday Night Football. The quarterback position is now in question with Heineke coming back off of a quick turnaround week. He didn't look good. There's talk that Kyle Allen's going to play quarterback. I think Washington's just kind of licking their wounds at this point, and they're going to look to maybe, who knows what, try to finish strong. It's a division game. They're going to definitely play for something. But knowing all the changes that are happening on that offense and seeing McLaurin, who's been struggling over the past few weeks, definitely a tough matchup, and I don't blame you, Pat, for sitting him against the Philadelphia Eagles. My tight end start of the week, I mean, you could go with either guy. I'll lean Noah Fant versus the Los Angeles Chargers. You could do Albert Okwuegbunam as well. They almost split everything down the middle, which is a shame because they're tight end like 13 and 14 over the last 4 weeks in our league of record. But if you combine the two of them, they'd be like tight end 3. What that offense is built is just spread things around, look for the open receiver. Obviously, Bridgewater was out this past week, so you had Drew Lock in there who, I'd rather see Teddy Bridgewater. I'll put it that way. But seeing Noah Fant in that matchup, I mean, you can't. I don't think you could go wrong with either guy. I think they both have the potential for that 7 catches for 60 yards, and one of them gets the touchdown. But I'll lean Noah Fant. He's kind of been the bigger name, so to speak. Okwe Bunham just had a tough drop to kind of almost maybe get the Denver Broncos the game versus the Raiders. So I'll go Noah Fant against the Los Angeles Chargers as my start of the week. Pat is going with Gerald Everett. We just talked about Gerald Everett versus the Detroit Lions. Again, he's been one of the best tight ends over the past few weeks. He's really the focal point of Russell Wilson's passing game, which, again, that's kind of scary to think. But, hey, if it's helping us get fantasy points, that's all it's all about. Gerald Everett keeps getting that 4 for 60 and a touchdown. That's going to win you that position possibly as a top 10, maybe even a top 5 tight end based on the volume and the points per game with touchdowns. I mean, again, seeing Gerald Everett become a fixture in that offense is important, helps us out. And Pat likes him a lot this week against the Detroit Lions. Pat doesn't like James O'Shaughnessy of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, I don't disagree with you there, Pat. Going up against the New England Patriots, who are one of the best against the tight end position, the Jacksonville offense as a whole. This is going to probably be a master class for Bill Belichick, getting a wounded animal in the Jacksonville Jaguars, a rookie quarterback. He chews them up and spits them out. Seeing that team going against the New England Patriots, it's almost criminal what's going to happen probably in that matchup. So while O'Shaughnessy has been one of the better tight ends as of late, being a little bit more of a fixture in that offense for Trevor Lawrence amongst some other players, this week's going to be tough. The offense as a whole is going to struggle. The quarterback's going to struggle. And in turn, James O'Shaughnessy will not be a valid tight end option for you this week, Pat. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm looking at a matchup, and it's Mike Gesicki versus the Tennessee Titans. The Dolphins have really done a great job with Gesicki throughout the season. He has struggled a little bit as of late, but that's also been matchup based. And we did mention last week that he's really going to finish against some tough matchups. You're going up against Tennessee. They're the 5th best against the tight end position. They give up less than 5 a game. Just for an idea, you had George Kittle, who had been out of this world the last 3 weeks, putting up 30 and 40 like it was his job, which it is. He was held to 2 receptions on 3 targets for 21 yards against the Tennessee Titans. Maybe it's the coach being an old linebacker, but they know how to shut that position down really well. Again, seeing Kittle come back down to earth and be more Clark Kent than Superman goes to show you how tough they are. Gesicki is not on the level of Kittle, but he's a pretty darn good tight end. He's going to have a tough time this week, unfortunately, against that Tennessee defense. So Mike Gesicki, sorry, buddy, I'm going to have to find a better option. I'm going to have to find it this week. I'm going to have to find it next week as well, again, because he finishes out against New England. And finally, defense. Pat, you like yourself some New Orleans Saints against the Carolina Panthers. Well, I don't disagree with you. Carolina's offensive struggles are to the point now where you're platooning. You were actually platooning Cam Newton as well as Sam Darnold. You know, Carolina was kind of a dark horse candidate to, maybe be a little more involved in playoffs. And that division obviously is a tough one, but maybe take Tampa tough. And they made some trades to get good guys in the secondary. And you turn around and they're just a really bad team. Only have 5 wins. You lost McCaffrey again this season. But looking at that defense of the Saints that has really come around, they were struggling there for a bit. This is a big matchup for them. It's a big division game. They can't afford to lose it. And they're not going to really have any shot to lose it at the rate they're going. They are just on the outside of the playoffs looking in. Tonight they have a tough matchup against Miami. Next week is a little bit easier. So I see where you're talking about, Pat. Saints against the Carolina Panthers defense start next week of week 17. I agree. I would say that my start of the week, though, is the Dallas Cowboys against the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona has been, a pretty high-flying offense through the season, but lately, again, we just said it. They're kind of leaking oil. Like they're starting to show some serious chinks in the armor. Some of it's injury-based. DeAndre Hopkins is out. They were without Rondale Moore as a help on wide receiver. They're definitely struggling. James Conner was just out with legit injuries. We see Kyler Murray struggling to get anything going. And as good as their offense has been, their last few games, I mean, they gave up, defenses have scored. Indianapolis got 6 on them over the weekend. Detroit got 8 against them. The Rams got 8 points against them in our league of record. They've lost 3 games in a row. They're kind of in a little bit of a tailspin right now. They're still in the playoffs, and there's nothing that's per se gonna get them out of the playoffs at this point. It's really about losing tiebreakers and moving further down the food chain. They definitely want to hang on to, or at least get involved in the home field aspect of a playoff game. So unfortunately, though, Dallas has just really come on strong. Their defense, which had been their Achilles heel, has really just started to dominate. Obviously, dominating the Washington football team is one thing, but just overall, the Cowboys have really played well on defense, and I can see that happening again this week. They're going to take it to Arizona and show them who is really in charge in this conference. Dallas Cowboys defense this week against the Arizona Cardinals. And as far as my sit of the week, I would be sitting the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Last 4 weeks, Cincinnati Bengals defense has been the 4th best in our league of record. The problem is that Kansas City gives just a shade over 2 points a game to defenses over the last 4 weeks and more. Their offense has really found its rhythm again. They are really clicking on all cylinders. And Cincinnati, while they have put up some points defensively in fantasy football, you're going to have a tough time doing it this week. It's going to be one of the matchups of the week overall. But knowing how tough that Kansas City offense has been for every defense that has played them pretty much since like week 8 when they really started to turn things back on. Cincinnati Bengals, good luck. I think you're going to find a better option somewhere else out there. So stay away from the Bengals this week against the Chiefs. And finally, Pat, you are sitting the Green Bay Packers against the Minnesota Vikings, which, again, looking at that offense and how they just put up yards and points. And, again, there's been some turnovers, but, if you're getting 25, 30 points a game and the passing yards and total offense is closing in on 400 or 500 yards, Green Bay is going to be in more of a shootout mode as opposed to a stingy defense. It's one thing to shut down Baker Mayfield with the Green Bay defense. That's one thing, but you're not going to do the same thing against Kirk Cousins in that offense. So I understand completely, Pat, that you're going to sit the Green Bay Packers against the Minnesota Vikings for Week 17. Well, folks, I hope I didn't lose you there. Again, it's been tough doing it this week without my partner. Pat, I hope you are enjoying the Christmas holidays while I am down here slaving hard on this, but, definitely a well-deserved vacation. Folks, it's Week 17. On behalf of Pat, I just want to say again, we really appreciate you guys all listening out there. Again, we're hoping that you're having fun with it. We're having a lot of fun with it. We're getting to the end of our fantasy football seasons. We're still going to look to put out some content in the off season because just like real football, fantasy football never sleeps. We will continue to give you our ideas on next season, the draft, maybe a little review of what we got right and wrong, and just overall a little strategies. You can never not mock draft, so that'll always be on the table as well. So Week 17, we're going into championships. We're hoping that you guys out there continue on. Good luck in your championship. On behalf of Pat, this is Scott. And folks, we will see you next week in Week 18. Peace.
We'd like to sincerely thank you for listening to the show. You can follow us on Twitter at the 9Route1 and at Scott from Delco. We put out a lot of funny and informative information on there. Our email address, if you'd like to email the show, is the 9routeFFB@gmail.com. Make sure to click the little plus wherever you're listening to follow the show. And if you like what we do, please leave us a review. Good luck this week, and we'll be back next week with more fantasy football info to take your team deep here on the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.